So I just wanted to get a few little housekeeping things out of the way before we begin our awesome armchair exploration today. If you have any questions that come up during the talk, whether they're for Mike and Jack, or whether they're of a technical nature, like something's not working, your video goes out, or you just are wondering how the heck Zoom works, go ahead and type it into the chat, and we'll have someone monitoring that the whole time so that they can answer your questions and get you all set up. We've been doing a lot of Zoom. There's a lot of things to know, so feel free to ask. We will probably know the answer. So I am going to welcome you all, and thank you for joining us today. As you may have gleaned from the title of today's presentation, we're here to celebrate Zegram's 30-year anniversary, a little trip down memory lane. So as a company of explorers and adventurers, we've been taking curious travelers to all 7 continents by land and by sea for 3 amazing decades. Our hosts today, Jack Grove and Mike Messick, are both original co-founders of the company, and at this point have led hundreds of Zegrahm expeditions from the North Pole to Antarctica and pretty much every place in between. So here are our 2 fabulous hosts. So even though we're celebrating 30 years of Zegrahm, both Jack and Mike have been involved in the expeditional travel industry long before the formation of Zegrahm. In fact, Mike's first taste of adventure was during a family trip to the Galapagos when he was 15. That trip sparked an interest in expedition travel that led him to his very first job out of college as a Zodiac driver, and the rest is history. Coincidentally, Jack also found his way to expedition travel through the Galapagos. However, in his case, he spent 7 years there doing extensive marine biological studies, which led to his comprehensive book, The Fishes of the Galapagos Islands, and a PhD in marine biology. So today, Mike is joining us from Salt Lake City. Jack is joining us from the Florida Keys. They've put a ton of work into searching the archives for images that span the decades, and they'll be sharing Zegram's origin story, as well as some memorable moments and probably some funny ones as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it over to our expedition leader extraordinaires, Mike and Jack.
Well, hi everybody. Jack, where are you? Are you on here?
I'm online. I see myself.
That's good. But you know, so Sonia said that we spent tons and tons of time.
I did that. Oh.
That we spent a lot of time doing this. And actually, the truth of the matter is, most of the slides were given to us by Sonia, and she's been working with us to make sure this goes smoothly. And I'd just like to throw it back to Sonia for a second and give her a big shout out, because she's been working at Zegram since 2003. And she started off as a receptionist in the office in the Nickerson Street, and then has progressed and is very high up in the marketing department in Zegram now. And she's been there now 17 years, and she's really been a great addition to the team. So thank you, Sonia, for putting this all together. Jack, are you there?
I am, but I'm just seeing the babies.
Well, the birth of Zegrahm Expeditions, and you know, Jack and I are here to talk about the history of the company. And I got to say, we did have a couple chats, and we did talk to one another, and thought free form is going to be much better, but we'll throw in a few slides. And you know, Jack and I, we've actually been chatting a bit for the last week, and it's always fun to reconnect. And Jack, what do you think? You're now in the Florida Keys, and a hurricane is approaching you. What do you think about sitting down for an hour and talking to everybody about the history of Zegram when this hurricane's coming at you?
To be honest, I'm pretty excited about it. I'm breaking a sweat because I always get nervous when I speak in public. And so apart from a little bit of nervousness, it is wonderful to connect with everyone. And I saw so many familiar names and faces there as I scrolled down. I'm a little nervous to mess around with the scrolling option on the right-hand side of my screen because I'm afraid I'll do something wrong. When I'm speaking, can everybody see me, or am I just there as a baby? Okay. Yeah. Well, Mike, you know that this must have been a long time ago because this was when I had hair.
and we all had the same hairdo as well. But, I mean, you know, you think 30 years, oh my God, it's like, it's double my age of when we started the company. This Zegrahm Expeditions has been our life, hasn't it, Jack?
It has indeed, and you and I met, what, some 15 years before that, 10 years before we started Zegram in 1990?
Yeah, well, it was more like 5, but still, it was a long 5 years.
Yeah.
But,
So,
you know, I thought that when Jack and I were chatting about putting this show together, that you can't really talk about the history of Zegram without talking about its founders and what brought us all together and where we came from, because it is an interesting story from the very onset. And I think I'll start here and put this picture of all the founders of Zegrahm Expeditions. Jack, this must have been taken like last year, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And from I guess left to right, me, Susan Zender, Werner Zender, Shirley Metz, Peter Harrison, and Jack Grove. And I think this is probably taken, probably mid-90s is my guess. You can see we all have the logo, the Zegram logo, the old one. It's now changed to something a little bit more modern. But the 6 of us got together because we were all working with another company, and that company, we were basically expedition staff on board, where Werner Zender was the expedition leader, Susan Zender was the cruise director, Peter Harrison was the ornithologist, Jack Grove was the marine biologist, Shirley was the explorer, and I was a very young Zodiac driver. And you know, if you go back those days and see, you know, here's Werner and Susan. Werner was the key person in our whole team. And I think that all of us recognize that we could have all started companies ourselves, but together we formed a company that was far stronger under the leadership of Werner. And let me see if this works. I made my cursor like super big so that you could see it on the screen. And obviously that's Werner right there. But what's interesting about Werner, and this is Susan, his wife, right next to him. I sent them a text yesterday to see if they could join, and unfortunately they can't join the talk today. But I wanted just to give a little introduction to all of the founders of the company. And this is Werner and Susan Zender. And when I mention them, I've got to bring up this next image, which is the Lindblad Explorer. And why I bring this up right now is because Werner was the youngest crew member on the Lindblad Explorer on its maiden voyage in 1969 when it sailed for Antarctica. And so he is in the forefront of the expedition cruising industry, even though he's trained as a chef. And he worked for a few years on the Explorer. Then he got a job as a hotel manager and provision master on this other ship, the World Discoverer. And both these ships are where Peter, Shirley, Werner, Susan, Jack, and myself, we all met. And in the case of Werner and Susan, they met on the World Discoverer. She was a passenger, he was the hotel manager. They fell in love on the ship, and within 1 month of that trip, they got married. and she was living in Seattle. She had a couple of furniture stores. They got married, and then they spent the next several years in the expedition cruising world, working on the World Discoverer and cruising around the world. And without Werner and Susan, I think all of the founders would agree that we would not have nearly as strong of a company as we do. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Shirley Metz and Peter Harrison, still great friends. And by the way, the six of us are still all great friends. Last year, we all met at Werner and Susan's place in Bend, Oregon, and had a long weekend together. But Peter Harrison is the world's authority on seabirds. He spent in his younger years 7 years traveling the world to produce the definitive book of the seabirds of the world. He traveled through on a Land Rover going through Africa, got to Cape Town, jumped onto a fishing vessel, worked on that for several months so he could go down and draw albatross. And now, not only has he had the definitive book on seabirds of the world, but also he's now just on the verge of finishing the second edition. And what a great character. I know many of you have traveled with him, and what an awesome person. And lucky for him, he's married to Shirley Metz, who is also a wonderful person. She had a career before getting into expedition cruising. She was in the outdoor retailing business. She managed Hobie Cats. I think you might know some of you know that company. And then she came to Antarctica as a passenger, fell in love with Antarctica, decided that she wanted to do something important. So she decided to ski to the South Pole. She was the first woman to ski to the South Pole. And she then came on board the World Discoverer as a lecturer. She met Peter, they fell in love, and within 10 months, they were married. So there's something about the World Discoverer and love that is involved. But the Peter and Shirley are also awesome people. And then, of course, our very own Jack Grove. And Jack is an awesome individual, a character. Sonia did a nice job of introducing him at the beginning, but one of my favorite stories about Jack in the early days is that as a teenager, he basically found his way by hitchhiking and a short flight to the Cayman Islands and worked at the turtle farm. Once he was done with that, he got a flight to Miami, joined the university there, got a degree in marine biology. When he was done with that, he made his way to the docks in Miami and thumbed his way to the Galapagos, where he stayed 7 years and researched all of the fish of the Galapagos and became and has written the definitive book on the Galapagos fishes. And he's also in his second edition. And Jack will take over in a second, but we did agree that I would do a quick introduction to the individuals, which leaves me with a very young Mike Messick. And it might be awkward that I introduce myself, but I'll go ahead and do it because I know what I've done over my life. And that was I see Joy Durham. She's shaking her head like, oh my God, he doesn't have any gray hair. And so at 15 years old, my mom and dad took me to the Galapagos Islands, and the ship that we went on by chance was the Lindblad Explorer. And I was 15 years old. I saw these guys driving Zodiacs, and I told my dad, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I told the expedition leader, a guy named Mike McDowell, and he kind of laughed at me and he said, write me a letter when you're 20. And I did. And he got me my first job as a Zodiac driver while I was in college up in the Arctic, working on the Lindblad Explorer. And I'd never driven a Zodiac in my life. And so these are, I have now, by the way, if you've been on a boat with me, these are the founders of Zegrahm Expeditions. And we all work together with another company called Society Expeditions. That company had some issues, and I'll just leave it at that. We got together, thought we could do a better job, and here we are 30 years later, and we've had one hell of a ride. Don't you agree, Jack?
Absolutely, Mike. And you've done a great job of introducing us all. The company's been successful because we're still best of friends, and Zegrahm Expeditions, which, by the way, is a combination of all of our last names. For those of you who are not familiar with it, I am the GR in the name Zegram, and I didn't like it. When we were deciding what we're going to call the company, I said, no way, I don't like that name. It just doesn't. Is it a kind of whiskey? And do you pronounce it Zegram, Zegram, Zegrahm? And we never actually voted on anything. When we sat down at a round table and we talked about what to do and so forth, and what our plans were, when you were the odd man out, as I was with regard to rejecting the name Zegram, everybody else loved it, and it was unique. And it was pointed out to me that the name might be a little strange, but after all, look at Xerox, and then there's Kleenex, and then there's Zegram. And it has been a name that's not just well known, but it's now clearly the company is one of the leaders in this rather small but growing niche and travel adventure. And Mike, since you got slighted a little bit with the with introducing the rest of us, I would just say a few things about my experience with you. I've worked on many different vessels in many different parts of the world, and when you take 80 to 100 people, put them on an adventure travel vessel, and you're responsible for coordinating not just the passengers and working with the cruise director to make sure everything goes smoothly. You also have a handful of leading authorities like lecturers and naturalists and anthropologists, and they're not always the easiest people to work with. So unless the person who is in charge of the operation, obviously the captain handles the ship, but the expedition leader has to handle the logistics. And I can say without doubt that Mike, you're the most efficient, fun guy to work with, and I've been with you from the Arctic to Antarctica and everywhere else. I must say I don't like your staff sheets very much. And that's a bit of an in-house joke for the staff members who are listening. Mike has a thing with Excel spreadsheets, and he puts everything into boxes. Yeah, see, there you go. And it all manages to get coordinated. But if I was going to have one complaint, Mike, that'd be my only one. But
I don't think that's in the realm of this discussion, Jack.
It's too late. I've already said it. It might be the only counterproductive thing I have to say in the whole presentation. But isn't it wonderful? We have, I don't know what our numbers are here, but quite a few people who have enjoyed the travel programs that our company has put together. And we know that without this incredible group of people that follow us to the ends of the world, we wouldn't be where we are today. And here we are, 30 years of travel, and we're trying to celebrate it in cyberspace in 30 minutes, So it is quite an adventure. So this is the round table that you see here. And I think the important thing is the table is round, in that folks who have never seen such a picture before recognize that there were very few instances around that table where we were angry at each other. There were some. We never voted because it was always done by consensus, but there was a lot of laughter. We didn't allow anybody to drink wine or beer until after the meeting was over. And it was fun from the organizational part. And we're looking at a world map. That was always my favorite part of the meeting, when you sat down and you put your fingers on a new itinerary. Where do we want to go 2 years from now? And so it has been an adventure from day one. And
so much happened on this table. We would get together twice or three times a year, and we would look around the world to see what ships were available, because we had decided that we would never own a ship and that we would only charter ships. So we were always on the lookout for ships. We were always on the lookout for itineraries. We were always on the lookout for new ideas. And with the six of us, we had hundreds and hundreds of ideas, and only a few of them, or actually quite a few of them, came to fruition. And boy, were those fun times. And you're thinking about the places we've gone and what we've done around this table, and the ships that we have found and chartered, and the itineraries that we have designed. But on our first meeting, so we started the company the end of November 1990. I was 27 years old. Jack was 38 years old. We had no idea what we were doing. Luckily, Werner and Susan and Peter and Shirley and Jack, they all know what they're doing. I was a little bit young and naive.
You were the puppy.
You
the puppy.
They did do that from time to time. But so we decided that we needed to have a newsletter. And we went through the archives, and we actually found the very first newsletter, volume 1, number 1, December 1990. And inside, if you open it up, it introduces all the founders, and it talks of here, it's like, we're advertising the first ever Northeast Passage. And we have a world map later on. I'll show it to you where that is in case you don't know where it is. But also in one of these very, very early newsletters, we said, okay, we're going to run a trip to Antarctica for the millennium, from 1999 to 2000. And nobody had even been thinking about it at that time. We were thinking about it because we didn't really have much to sell. And so in the newsletter, it says, what are you doing for December 31st, 1999? We're going to Antarctica, join us. We didn't have a ship. We didn't have an itinerary. We didn't have a price. We didn't have anything. And people started signing up like crazy. And so that kind of put pressure on us to find a ship to take them to Antarctica.
Yeah, and then we had, actually, if you recall, Mike, the purpose of that had a lot to do with our desire to celebrate 10 years in business. And so, hey, let's have a founders party on a ship in Antarctica. Well, it was a great idea, but we had so many people that want to join us that we filled the first vessel. Then we had to get a second vessel, and then we made plans for those two vessels, the World Discoverer and the Explorer, to meet in South Georgia. And then we didn't have enough space, so you took a third vessel. Where did you go?
We took the Klebnikov, the icebreaker, and we went to the Ross Sea. So ultimately, we had 3 ships for the Millennium trip, and we had to split all the founders up. So we didn't have our party together for going into the Millennium, but we certainly did have fun, having the 3 trips. But it was like nobody was even thinking about it, and here we were coming up with like cool ideas, and that was one of the fun things about sitting around this table. And not only did we have 3 founding principles, which were rather simple. It was never charter a ship, never use your client's money until the trip goes, and 3, don't have more than 15 employees. And we kept 1 and 2. Number 3 became quite clear that we needed to have more than 15 employees at some point just to service all the trips that we were running. And but but in addition to that, we had like some pretty key philosophies that were not officially, you know, the founding principles, but, you know, things that came very naturally within us, which was like, always explore new places, and, you know, do things. What are some of the other ones, Jack? Like make sure we've got the best educational program.
And just a correction on the first principle was never own a ship, because we chartered many vessels, but we never wanted to own one. And I think the only vessel that we owned was that flat bottom boat that we put on the Coral Princess off of Australia on the Kimberley coast. But yeah, so the philosophies and those plans all worked for us. And Mike, let's go to the world map. I'm anxious to talk about circumnavigations.
Oh, whoops, daisies. Okay, there we go. Oh yeah, that was a fun time, wasn't it, Jack, when we were designing circumnavigations around the world?
Yeah, so we've thought about, okay, what can we circumnavigate? So I know, you know, you and I were usually not we didn't do too many of the circumnavigations together on the same vessel, but I know I led 3 circumnavigations of Newfoundland, and that was back in the early years. And I guess actually that was the only circumnavigation that I led, but I know you did a bunch of them, and it became a very popular thing. People were like wanting to, okay, what are we going to circumnavigate next? So what else do we circumnavigate?
Oh, it's a whole slew, because, you know, you've got this idea that there's a completion factor. When you circumnavigate something, you feel like you've done it. But one of the funny things, very early, 1993, so like we were really, really young, we did an attempt of circumnavigating Greenland. It'd never been done before by anybody, by no explorers, by none of the Inuit, by anybody at all. And our plan was to circumnavigate going counterclockwise, and that didn't work out so well. We got up to about the northern tip, and we got stuck in ice. We needed to get we were on a conventional icebreaker. A nuclear icebreaker had to come down and rescue us. And as opposed to ending up here in Sonderstrom Fjord, the ship took us to Svalbard, and we ended the trip there, and we never did a circumnavigation, and it's still never been done, ever. But it was a hell of a story of getting stuck in the ice for 4 days and having the nuclear powered icebreaker come and retrieve us.
Just a thought, Mike, you know, as the Arctic ice continues to melt, maybe that's something we should put back in the planning. It probably is going to be easier to get around the north end.
I think you're right, Jack, and that's something to consider in the future.
And then, okay, interrupting, but another circumnavigation that I know you were the leader on, and there was a bit of a fiasco. I don't know if I should mention it, but you did a circumnavigation of Sumatra, and I just arrived in Singapore, and there was a bit of a problem. Could you maybe share with us what happened on that?
Oh, wait, are we supposed to like dig up some dirty laundry on this talk?
Well, you know, it's history, and I think it had a happy ending, didn't it?
It had a happy ending, yeah. So, okay, so before one of our first stops on the circumnavigation of Sumatra was to stop in Malaysia. We made a stop, we made an excursion, we came back to the ship, and we sailed. And we had lunch, people had rests, in particular the captain was having, and oh, Julie Christensen is on this call. Your husband, Peter Fielding, was having a snooze after lunch. When he woke up, he got an email from the ship's agent that said, oh, by the way, you left one of your clients here. And we were 6 hours underway, and the next day it was going to be a heavy day. We were going to see orangutans, and we needed to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning and all this kind of stuff. And it was like one of the cornerstones of the itinerary. And so we decided we're not going to turn around and get this passenger that we had left behind. Oops. And so what we did when we got to Indonesia the following day, we got Linda Murphy, one of the expedition staff. We gave her Mr. X's passport. She flew to Kuala Lumpur, got in a taxi, drove down to Malacca, picked up Mr. X, who was essentially under house arrest because he was in Malaysia without a passport, picked him up, drove up to Kuala Lumpur, flew to Sumatra, and then came back to the ship. So it was a little bit embarrassing to leave him behind, but it was a happy ending because we did get him. Was that the story you wanted me to tell, Jack?
Yes, that was that. Enough said about that. Thank you very much. But what just quickly, what other circumnavigations did you lead? I know I was on one with you around PNG.
Yeah, Papua New Guinea, we've done a circumnavigation. We've done a circumnavigation of Honshu. We've done a circumnavigation of Hokkaido. We were involved with Quark Expeditions to do a circumnavigation of Antarctica, which was that was a 66-day trip. Although we have not done a circumnavigation, we have had multiple trips, and ultimately we have been all the way around the African continent.
Yeah, and Black Sea, Mike. I've done the Black Sea trip twice.
Black Sea circumnavigation, and I know some of the people that are on the talk. You're saying, wait, but we did this too. There is like several circumnavigations of Baffin Island that we did.
Oh yeah, I did that. Yeah.
What else?
Sicily.
Yes. Sicily. Sicily is right here. Yes, circumnavigation of Sicily. Thank you, Sandy.
Iceland.
Oh gosh, yes. Thank you, Iceland, Sandy. Circumnavigation of Iceland. Oh, we have circumnavigated Spitsbergen, Sulawesi. We have been all the way around it, but we have not actually done a technical circumnavigation.
South Georgia.
South Georgia.
Oh, South Georgia.
Yes, thank you, Jill. South Georgia.
First ever.
So this is interesting.
There.
If you go back to the beginning of Zagram, at the time there were 2 ships that were going down to Antarctica, and we worked on both of them, Jack and I, and Werner and Susan, and Peter and Shirley, and now there are probably like 65 ships a year going to Antarctica. At that time, there were 2. And so we were exploring all kinds of new places. And one of the first things we did in that round table, the first time we met, is like, what is the trip we want to do? And our first full charter was a circumnavigation of South Georgia, just down here. And at that point, nobody had done a circumnavigation of South Georgia. Now it's commonplace. But back then, oh my God, was that exciting.
Cool.
What else? I mean, we had like the first Northeast Passage, which went all along the northern coast of Russia, up to Franz Josef Land, up to the North Pole, and then back down and along the coast of Russia down here. That was the first, and that was in 1991. Jack, you were on board that, weren't you?
Yes, and I saw Anna Zuckerman is online, and she was also on that trip.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many things that we have done over the years. Oh, the Kimberley. A lot of you have been to the Kimberley. Nobody was running tours to the Kimberley before we started going there, and we convinced an Australian company to take their ship from the Great Barrier Reef over to the Kimberley. And now, again, that is commonplace for itineraries around the world. As you can see that Jack and I get rather excited when we see a map, because all we see is like either potential or places that we've been. And likewise, places that all of you have been. Yeah, so exciting.
Don't forget Cuba.
Oh, Cuba.
Don't forget Cuba.
Thank you. Circumnavigation of Cuba. Thank you.
I think that probably covers it. But Mike, let's keep moving on. What's our next slide here that we've got?
So, you know what I thought I'd show is our office. People in our office, this is taken some years ago. And the way that we set up the company was that Werner and Susan would run the office side of things, and Peter, Shirley, Jack, and I would lead the trips. And there was a time when we were smaller that we would advertise that there would be an owner of the company on every single trip. And of course, we got a little bit bigger and that didn't happen anymore. But look at all these young faces. And there's some people I want to point out. Obviously, Werner, you can see. Susan, you can see. But some people that you know that are still working with us today, here, Lisa Wutzranger.
Lisa and Lynn.
Yeah, and Lynn Gregg. And I'm going to shout out because I know Joy is on this call. Joy Durham, she was our longest running employee. She started in 1992 or 3. She retired just a few years ago, and she was at Zagram for 25 years. I don't know if Barry is on here, but Barry, she was in charge of our accounting and with Zagram for many, many, many years. As well. We had an incredible, loyal group of staff. And before I told the story about going to fetch the guy from Malaysia, this is Linda Murphy. She is the one who did that.
And by the way, sorry,
yeah,
Mike, but Barry is right now with Joy and in somewhere up in the Northeast, and so Barry is on the call too. She's
okay. Awesome. I love it. But this is one of the early days. This is right at our limit where we were at 15 people. I think ultimately we got up to about 35 people working in the office. But what a great group of people. And we would, it wasn't all about work. I mean, we would do things every year. We would go and Peter and Shirley would host all of the office staff as well as some of the field staff to their homes. And it was called Zapsville. So there was a lot of interaction, a lot of fun, and a lot of games, and a little bit of drinking, and
just a little bit,
just a little bit. And so that was once a year, and then another time a year we would go skiing together in Whistler, all of us together again. I mean, you could see why we were all such great, and we're still such great friends for all the time that we've been. Together having fun. Yeah, Jack, I'm gonna have a drink. Say a few words.
Well, okay. Well, I don't have control of the screen, I don't think so. Give me another slide.
Okay. So, this one.
Okay. Cool. Space. We decided at one point pretty early on that. Taking our guests on a suborbital flight would be a good investment of our energy. And one of the things that we decided was that in order to make the decision, are we going to invest in Zegrahm space voyages, we better experience weightlessness and 2 Gs. Can our travelers tolerate 2 Gs of force? And so we got together in Los Angeles, we rented a van, we went up to Mojave, to the space, to that training school in Mojave. And I'll never forget, there was a presentation there before we did any experimentation. And Peter Harrison, being the character that he is, the astrophysicist, explained to us the way in which this would be possible, that we could take the first paying passengers on a suborbital flight so that they could, number one, experience weightlessness, and number two, that they could look down at the curvature of the Earth. And it was got to be a very technical astrophysical discussion. And there was some mention of the heat shield bringing the spacecraft back down to Earth, and the statement included a titanium. And it sort of went over our heads and everything. And at the end of this discussion, that was very academic, the scientist said to us, "Are there any questions?" And Peter Harrison said, "Could you explain to us a little more about the titanium interface?" And of course, we all looked at Peter like none of us knew what it was. We knew he didn't know what it was, and it was just good to laugh. But then we went and did some experimentation. And first there was this thing where two of us, and I was with Scott Fitzsimmons, who has left us some time ago, passed away. But Scott was the director of Space Voyages, and he got stuck with a really challenging thing. Anyway, Scott and I were in this centrifuge, for lack of a better word, a little machine that spins you around real fast, and you experience 2Gs, and your face goes back, and you can't breathe, and there's a video camera, and so everybody else on the team is looking at you as you're experiencing this. And I almost got sick. I definitely did not like it, and I decided maybe this Space Voyages thing is not for me. Well, everybody else did fine with the centrifuge, except me. But then we did this thing with some kind of a weird machine that you strapped yourself in on, and it spun you around in circles, upside down and right and left, and very fast. And you had control of how fast you wanted to go. And I hit the maximum button, and I was going, we have a video of it, I was going so fast you couldn't see me. I was blurred like the propeller on an aircraft, and I loved it. It was great. And nobody else on the team fared quite so well. Some of them almost got sick. So I felt redeemed. Well, anyway, we continued with the Space Voyages program. We never put, well, there was one thing that we did that, that's a long story. We sent some stuff.
I think so. But essentially, this is like 1997, and we were proposing to take people in space in 2001. And it still has not happened. It was we made a separate division, and after a few years, we actually were able to sell that division, and then we moved on because we decided it was really out of our realm. But we did have this idea. It's like, okay, well, space is going to be a few years away. What are we going to do in the meantime to keep people entertained until space comes along? So of course, you know, if space isn't going to happen for 5 years, and now of course it's now like 25 years, it still hasn't happened. We're going to take people to the deep sea ocean, and Jack was very involved with this. But so we developed another division. This is about 1997, 1998, called Deep Sea Voyages.
And this is Werner with the Russian technician in the submersible. We took two groups down to the Titanic. I had no interest in doing that because as much as I love the ocean, there's no way I wanted to be strapped in a little tiny submarine to go down and see the Titanic. But we did run 2 trips out there. And then after that, there was one program that we did as part of our deep sea program, where we chartered a barge and 2 small submersibles in Vancouver, and we took them up to Hornby Island and off of the east coast of British Columbia. And Phil Newton here in the left of this picture, Sylvia Earle in the middle, myself in the submersible. It didn't work very well, mainly because of the weather, but also because we didn't calculate. It was a dive with Zegram Deep Sea Voyages and Jack Grove to see the 6-gill sharks. There's only 2 places in the world where 6-gill sharks come out of the depths up into less than 150 feet of water, and one of them is near Hornby Island. So it sounded like a great idea. I was very enthusiastic about it, but in order to get people to see the 6-gill sharks in the submersible, you had to have them accommodated in the dive lodge there. And then the next day we went out and did this on about 6 different occasions, and it was windy as hell. And the current was much stronger than anticipated. And the only people in that expedition that got to see the 6 gills were the divers in dry suits that were with me when I didn't go in the submersible. I went scuba diving with the dry suits, and we saw several of them, and it was wonderful. It was a lovely opportunity to interact with my respected friend Sylvia Earle, and Phil Newton was the guy who built that little submersible. So we then sort of dismantled the deep sea program, and we sort of decided maybe we shouldn't take people into outer space or go down into the deep sea. Let's just stay on Earth. And that made our operation a little bit more effective.
But it was good at that point we refocused and decided at that point, it's like, what we really do well is designing new itineraries, chartering ships, taking people, and education. I mean, I still believe to this day, of all of our competitors, we have the best educational program. And also the philosophy of exceeding expectations, taking advantage of whatever's thrown in front of us. So if we're going along and we're supposed to be somewhere at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and there's some breaching wells, I mean, we're going to stop and watch them for an hour and be late. Yeah. And I think that we do a really good job of exceeding expectations, taking advantage of what is that we don't know, and being spontaneous and working with really top class lecturers and staff members. It is kind of fun. I don't know, Jack, I just scrolled through as you were telling the story about deep sea voyages to see some of the people that are on this call, and it's great. We've got old colleagues, we have old employees or past employees, we have a lot of guests that we've traveled with all around the world, and that is also, it's like on a year-round basis. From the beginning, we've been running at 70% repeat clients on a year-round basis, which is unheard of in the industry. And that kind of validated us, very young explorers, and what we wanted to do by exploring the world. Don't you think, Jack?
I do, but Mike, I'm going to point out we're running a little tight on time. I'd like to sort of move toward wrapping things up, and I believe we were still planning on opening the floor for dialogue. So let's try to look at the other images that you and I talked about that you still have on the show.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm going to put this one image up, which is an awesome image and an awesome story. And perhaps, Jack, you could do tell us about the anchor.
Well, yeah, there's no time to do the full story. I would guess of the guests that are tuned in here, especially those who have traveled with us in the Eastern Pacific, know the story of the discovery of a shipwreck that happened when we were on the Explorer in 1989, and I was looking for a dive site. I was by myself while everybody else was ashore, and I'm the guy in the red bandana here, and to my left is Captain Karl Ulrich Lampe, and to his right is Mike Messick, and then the other folks are all Pitcairn residents, Steve Christian, the mayor at that time, and then there's Miss Shalene Plus, who was our cruise director. That was '89. This picture was taken the year following, because I stumbled upon this shipwreck that sank 100 years prior, and the exact location of it was never known. There were 11 men aboard. 2 of them ended up marrying Pitcairn Island women. They had some offspring. This is what the wreck This is the windlass on the left-hand side of your screen. In other words, that winch on the foredeck of an old motor sailor. And we got permission from the Pitcairn government to retrieve the anchor and some other artifacts, which we took to Pitcairn. In 1990, when the picture of us all on the dock was taken, in 1990, they had a big backhoe, and we dragged this anchor all the way to the top of the hill overlooking Bounty Bay. And so if we run another trip back to Pitcairn, it's a pretty exciting thing, I guess, maybe even more for me, because I found the ship. Mike, show us where on the map where Ducie Atoll is. Yeah, somewhere in there, a little further south, but nevertheless, we got the anchor to Pitcairn, we put it up, and the best part of the story of getting that anchor to the top of the hill, it happened to coincide, 1990 was 200 years, the bicentennial of the arrival of the mutineers on the Bounty. And so the Bounty, the HMS Bounty, was burned in 1790, and this vessel came a long time later, but one of the oldest living descendant of that wreckage, Millie Christian, was 82 years old at the time. And we had fireworks, and there was this big celebration, and the captain made a speech, and the mayor made a speech, and I talked about the discovery of the wreckage, and everybody else went into the town square and in Adamstown, and I was sitting on the anchor, and I heard this squeaky voice, and I turned around, and it was Millie Christian, barefoot, with a miro wood cane, and she walked up slowly toward the anchor. I got down, she took my arm in her hand, and we walked over to the anchor, and she said, "I feel like my father's ship has finally come home." And that was in many ways a high point of my adventure travel career. So if you get back to Pitcairn, you'll see the monument there, and we built two of them, one right there at the top of the hill. Let's go move ahead, Mike. See what we've got. I believe there might be another image or two. This picture was taken in October 2019. Is that right? That recently? I guess it was. We built a monument at Ducie. Now notice the breakers, a number of you have been with us. There are 4 islands in the Pitcairn group. Ducie is one of the 2 atolls in the group, and you can imagine, if you will, bringing a Zodiac in with hundreds of gallons of water, fresh water, to mix the cement with, and several hundred pounds of cement to rebuild the concrete monument, which basically says, seaward of this monument lies the remains of the HMS, it's not HMS, it was the Acadia. And so we built this monument, and a number of you had an opportunity to be there with us. It is still in place, and quite an adventure to build it, and getting people across that reef is quite a challenge. And thanks to expedition leaders like Mike, we were able to get everybody in. I remember I got in a little bit of trouble because I was so dedicated to the monument, I kind of forgot I needed to be driving Zodiac. But go ahead, Mike. I believe we might have one more here. So that's Ducie Atoll. And I guess it would be nice if we could give you a little bit of time for the guests here to tune in. I don't know, Sonia will probably pick up the mic here in a moment. not the microphone, not the Mike Messick, but this is Mike and I at the monument, which this time we didn't use salt water to mix the cement like we did in 1990. This time in 2019, we used fresh water. And I look forward to getting back to Pitcairn again, whenever that might be. But as I look at this picture, you know, I've got my wetsuit on there, and it was a little chilly. And
you know, Jack, when I look at this picture, I'm thinking it's like you and I were both busy manhandling Zodiacs, and we say, okay, we need to have a quick picture. And yet it's like, so we kind of like stopped the whole operation. We rushed up. I can see my shorts are still wet and dripping. And quick picture, and then back out there manhandling Zodiacs.
Yeah. And by the way, Mike, I have Pitcairn has a newsletter, and I have submitted a brief article as an update. In fact, I didn't get it out in time to inform the people on Pitcairn, but you know, there's only 56 residents on Pitcairn, so by now they will know that they made the headlines in this this blog. But I believe that there might be one more image, Mike. Is there?
No more of the anchor.
Well, this is sort of, you know, my closing comments here. When people ask if the company that I helped co-found has been successful, I don't measure the success by how much money we made, how recognized the company is. I measure the success of the company by the lifelong friendships that still exist. Fortunately, we're all still alive. And as we have this discussion and there's a hurricane barreling down on the Florida Keys and I need to get my boat out of the water and do some other things, I can't think of a more memorable way to spend an hour and see the images of everybody, so many of you who are listening in, I've traveled with. And Mike, you know, I love you like a brother, and I so respect what you've done. And I'm so grateful for the marketing team for the many hours that they have invested in this little production. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to Mike and I and putting up with our story telling. For the record, most of them are true.
Yeah, it's
guys.
Sonia, just sorry. I just wanted to reiterate what Jack was saying is, and I think I can speak for most of the, if not all the founders, that creating and running Zagram for a few decades has been a crowning achievement for us. And to design the itineraries, to go out and explore new places, and to have all of your support and getting excited over the same things that we get excited about. It really has been a brilliant 30 years, and it's not over yet. We just have a slight pause at the minute. But I think as soon as, you know, probably, well, I don't know, I'm not speculating officially when we're going to be cruising again, but it's not going to be in the next month or two. And we'll be doing this again and having fun and designing more itineraries and chartering more ships and getting excited about new places. And it's been a real fun ride, and it's been fun that we've been on this ride together. So thank you all very much.
All right, thank you both. And I want to just point out to everybody that these two did exactly 1 hour. If any of you have traveled with Mike, you know that punctuality is very important. And I can see that he lives up to his own standards of punctuality, even though if you had gone another half hour, guys, I don't think anyone would have minded. That was an awesome trip down memory lane.
Yes, well, Peter Harrison wasn't there.
How many times have we been late for dinner?
It's called OCD.
So I do have a few questions that came up in the chat. So this is our Q&A session. I will say that most of the questions are actually statements, and they are how wonderful the both of you are, how they would travel magical. Sally Gall says you guys are magical. They would travel to the ends of the earth with you. Can't wait to get back out there again. We love you all. And this one's probably a pretty, I don't know, this could be a loaded question. Someone has asked, what's the dumbest question anyone on an expedition has ever asked you?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go for it, Jack.
Standing on the dock in Puerto Ayora, Galapagos, a woman asked me how far we are above sea level. And I looked at her in the eyes and I could tell she was serious, and I stepped to the edge of the dock and I looked down in the nicest possible way. I said, well, I'd say maybe 6-7 feet. What do you think? And the other one was a little girl asked me where do the sea lions lay their eggs?
So I think one of the funny ones that I remember being in Paradise Bay in Antarctica, standing at the station Gonzales Videla, and a woman is looking up in the sky and she says, "Are we going to see the ozone hole on this trip?"
Did you?
I guess if we looked up.
Mike, you need to write a book about the dumb passenger questions.
Yeah. I have one other quick one. Approaching Tagus Cove, I've got everybody to look up at a group of seabirds that were flying over, and I said, look, they're flightless cormorants. And that wasn't a question, but it did get everybody's attention.
Well, I invite anyone who wants to ask a question you can unmute yourself now if you would like to ask it in person, or you can write it. But yeah, it pretty much looks like all questions have been answered, and basically it's just accolades.
Okay. All right, I'll try a couple. I'll say, Mike?
Yes.
How often do you drive a Zodiac under the falls in Raja Ampat?
Anytime we're passing and the time is right, which I try to govern it so the time is right and the tide is right, I will do that, because that is such a blast and so much fun. And for those of you that don't know this, there's this waterfall in New Guinea that goes directly into the sea, and you can, when the tide is right, you can drive your Zodiac underneath it, and it fills the entire Zodiac in about 4 seconds flat. I mean, the volume is incredible. And I know some of you have done this. You get stopping wet. We make sure that no cameras are in the boat. And the chief engineer gets always furious because we're flooding the batteries in the Zodiac. But oh my gosh, so much fun.
Yeah, but it's like there are tons of water pounding down on your head. And it is a great demonstration of how even if the Zodiac is completely filled, it doesn't sink.
That's true.
Good point.
I don't know if we knew that the first time we did that.
Okay, so Mike, I was on one of your cruises, and I believe it was the only cruise that's managed to land on each of the Pitcairn Islands.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
All 4 of them.
Yeah.
It was 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We did.
Henderson, Ducey, Pitcairn, and Ueno. Yeah.
Nope, it was 2010 the first time.
Yes, I was on 2010.
And we did all 4?
Yep, all 4. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
And Jack?
Yes?
I always enjoyed the performance that you and Murph did of The Strongest Man in the World.
It's been a few years since I've done that.
Fred, that's a perfect thing to mention, because guess what's coming up for our next live interactive event? Not that, but the Liars Club.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, one thing, Jack and Mike, did you see the photo that Little John and Murph used in their presentation? Little John in one of the smallest Speedos I've ever seen, and Murph in at least a somewhat tight trunk. I think it might have been.
Fred. I know Little John is on this show, and you said it's the smallest Speedo he ever had. Those were his shorts.
Even
You
better.
should have seen my Speedos, Mike.
Oh, I did want to make one further addition, if I might. Mike, when we were on the English, Rustic England, and we were up in Scotland, and I told you that I hoped to see Scapa Flow, you had the bus, talking about diverting things to make an occasion, you had the bus that I was on divert to take us so that I could see Scapa Flow during that period of time. We tried to do it.
Fred, I'm glad that worked out. And the thing is like, you as well as everybody else, you have come on a trip of a lifetime. And if it's a matter of a small deviation of a bus or something like that, of something that's going to make the trip a trip for you, we're going to do whatever we can to. And a lot of times it's possible, sometimes it's not, but we do try hard to try to make those, something small like that, which was big, happen. So thanks for recognizing that, brother.
Well, of course, it wasn't just you. It was also Little John and Murph who managed to get me back to the ship after an evening imbibing at a local pub.
Always look after you, Fred.
Have escorted a number of people back home from time to time.
Oh, and, wait. Mimo, are you still on?
Yes, right here.
Okay. Oh, hi, Ann.
Hi.
Were you on 2 times ago when I complimented your Zodiac driving and getting us out of Pitcairn after we had the Zodiac up to about a 60-degree angle? That was a fantastic drive that you did. Sorry, Little John. He really did a great job getting us out of there.
He always does a great job.
Well, yeah. If we got out, I'm happy that we did. Yeah.
We all live to tell the tale. Yes.
It certainly has been a lot of fun and great to see all of your faces. I've scrolled through a few times and seen those of you that are on video and those of you that are have your video off. But it's really fun to reconnect, especially during these times where we don't have a lot of social interaction. And it's been fun putting this together, and hopefully we can be traveling together soon.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yes.
Well, until then, we're going to continue our armchair explorations. I alluded to Liars Club. We do actually have a date for that. It's going to be August 11th. So keep an eye out for the registration. It should be fun and an adventure in Zoom, which I think we're all getting really good at Zoom, everybody. So give yourselves a hand for that.
Sonia.
And I wanted to mention that this entire presentation will be up on our website by next week. I'll send an email out as well with the link so that if you want to watch it again, you can watch it again. If you want to share it with friends or family, please feel free to do so as well. And again, thanks to Mike and Jack for taking time out of their busy schedules to take us on this. I don't think I see any other questions.
Sonia, I have a
question.
question.
Tuesday, I think August 11th is supposed to be a Thursday. So let me check my calendar real quick.
11th is a Tuesday,
It's a Tuesday.
if it's the 11th.
Wow. Then it's a Thursday, the 13th.
13th.
The 13th. Thank you, Sandy. Way to double check the I's and T's here. So, all right. So the 13th, Liars Club. Again, thanks for everyone for coming. We had over 109 participants at the apex of everything here. So thanks to everyone for taking time out of their busy isolation schedules. And it's great to see all your faces again. And yeah, hope to see you all again really soon.